Thanks so much, everybody, for being here. This is our West Valley Neighborhood Alliance on Homelessness general meeting agenda for October 23rd, 2022. And today's meeting objectives, we are going to have conversations with election 2022 candidates. And I just wanted to have everyone be advised that all eligible candidates were invited. And we'll have some updates on upcoming West Valley Neighborhood Alliance on Homelessness events, as well as review some council files. So I want to thank you all for being here. We'll go ahead and get started right away. Our first guest that we have here will be Pilar Schiavo. Thank you so much for being here. And just to give you a little bit of information on Pilar, she's a small business owner and nurse advocate who has been delivering for the community for more than 20 years. Pilar has worked for 20 years in the labor movement. 13 years of that was with the California Nurses Association to make sure workers and families could put food on the table, housing, retirement, security, and had sick leave when they needed it. She also helped deliver guaranteed health care, including reproductive health care, to more than 1 million people throughout California. Pilar is an independent voice who will stand up for those in power just to get things done. Welcome, Pilar, and thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. So I think the format is I just kind of talk a little bit about my background and things I'd like to work on in Sacramento. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, wonderful. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. I am thrilled to be able to talk with you about an issue that's really important to me, which is tackling our homelessness crisis. Just to give folks a little bit of background, so I'm running for Assembly in Assembly District 40, and the lines have changed just for this election for the first time because of redistricting at the end of last year. And so for folks who aren't familiar with the district, it actually includes a lot of the West Valley, which is where I live in Chatsworth, and the district is Chatsworth, Northridge, Granada Hills, Porter Ranch, North Hills and Mission Hills, and a little bit of Sylmar on the north side of the 210, and then up to Santa Clarita and Castaic. So that's the district that I'm running to represent. It used to cut off at Devonshire, so people south of Devonshire were in Jesse Gabriel's district. So there's a whole new swath of folks who would be in this district for the first time. And has been wonderful to connect with folks and nice that our Northwest Valleys are made whole in this new redistricting. So I appreciate Ray sharing some of my background and history. As he mentioned, I've been working for 20 years on important issues in our community, fighting for good jobs, healthcare, and fighting our homelessness crisis here in the West Valley. You know, I first got involved around homelessness just simply because my daughter goes to Chatsworth Park Elementary School here, and we got a message from the principal talking about parents being concerned about Topanga Apartments, the permanent supportive housing development near the school. And at the time, there was no information. There was a lot of concerns and a lot of questions, but not a lot of facts around it. And so, you know, I went to the parent Facebook page, which is where they directed us, and just saw a lot of questions and concerns and not a whole lot of answers. They directed us to our council members' office, which I called, but did not hear back from. So I just started researching myself online, trying to find information about the project, and found an article that quoted some folks. I called everyone who was quoted, including the developer, someone from Everyone In who's organizing around the project, and just trying to get more information about what the development was. And, you know, through that process, started connecting with folks and learning for the first time about permanent supportive housing. And, you know, this is something that I was able to work with neighbors and advocates around to support, because when I learned the facts about it, that it was going to be a permanent home for folks, that it was going to have wraparound services, that it was, you know, that it was a real permanent solution to homelessness. I feel like all of our communities are impacted by homelessness. We have folks from all of our communities who experience homelessness, and that means we all need to be a part of the solution when it comes to homelessness. And, looking at the project, learning about the development, hearing about the safety measures that were taken, I felt like it was an important solution that we should be a part of. So I connected with other, West Valley leaders. We had a meeting in my living room, and that was the start of West Valley Homes Yes, which I was a co-founder of. And originally we came together really to organize neighbors and advocates to support that development and support a solution in our own community. We're thrilled that it was able to pass and that it's being built right now, and will be providing permanent housing for veterans who have experienced homelessness. And the West Valley Homes Yes, which we call WVI because we have lots of WV for our community. We went on during the pandemic to start bringing food out to folks in encampments, because when everything shut down during COVID, things shut down for unhoused folks as well. And so people who used to be able to get hot meals at churches or food at different locations, pretty much all of those locations had shut down. So we started doing outreach, and that, through the work of folks involved in the group, really has grown and expanded, and now probably, delivered more than 50,000 meals to folks, who are experiencing hunger and food insecurity every single day. So, this was really kind of a big first learning process for me around homelessness. And it really was one of the things that motivated me to run too, because, I was involved in our outreach and had, a regular route that I would go to where, we always have our volunteers go to the same location so that we build relationships with folks and can help connect them with services and supports when we have those opportunities. And just the stories that I heard and the experience folks had just made me realize how broken our system is when it comes to addressing homelessness, and how much wasted resources and energy is spent on Band-Aid solutions that are not actually solving the problem. And it's incredibly frustrating. I know it's frustrating for everyone, to see folks experiencing homelessness on streets and sidewalks. Most of all, of course, the people who are experiencing it themselves. And, I've heard countless stories of folks who have housing vouchers but can't find a place to live still. People who have been promised housing, but never got into a place, and some who have, some who have made it, and it's incredible to see that happen. But we are not solving the problem. And despite, housing over 200 people a day, more than that are falling into homelessness every day. And it's probably about to get a lot worse because of a possible economic downturn, because of, probably increased evictions that may be happening with folks who were not able to pay during COVID, and those protections going away. We're about to have a really serious crisis on our hands, even more so than we're seeing now. And so, the work that I think needs to happen in Sacramento is really around both addressing homelessness in terms of, solutions like Topanga Apartments, permanent supportive housing that helps people get permanent housing and has the supportive services that they need to help get them on their feet, especially people who have been chronically homeless, which is, what that housing is really targeted at, right? But also, I think we need to approach it in a really holistic way. Part of what we need to do is we need to prevent people from falling into homelessness in the first place. If we can give rental assistance or mortgage assistance to folks who are on the verge of going into homelessness, those kinds of investments are much cheaper, much cheaper than us trying to get folks out of homelessness once they're already on the streets. There's been a lot of talk about shifting to responding to calls around homelessness or mental health crises. to teams of people who are really trained and experts in those areas to get people the help that they need. And, I think that those are kinds of solutions that we need to invest in, actually, when people are called, that there are resources at the other end, that there's support at the other end, that there's housing at the other end to help people get off the streets and into the, services and support that they need. And I think that we need to look at things that really remove the red tape that exists right now so that projects can come online much faster, right? I was talking to one of the developers of who provide services and also develop permanent supportive housing. And they talked about how when you apply for funding, you go and you get like a third of your funding at the local level and then get a third of it at, banks and private investment, and then go try and get a third of it approximately from the state. And if your timing is such that you go to the state and their application process had already closed for that year, you have to wait until the next year before you can apply for that funding. So you're sitting on property, you're paying property taxes for, you're delaying the project, your costs are going up because you're delaying it another year, and materials and labor is undoubtedly going to go up. And so just by, tweaking some of our, the bureaucracy around funding, around being able to move projects through, more quickly, we can see these kinds of solutions come on much, much more quickly than they are right now. And I think that there's also creative solutions that we need to take seriously around investing in, rapid rehousing of folks when they're experiencing homelessness, and also rapid reuse and rebuilding. So, buildings, shopping malls, or strip malls, hotels and motels, office buildings that are no longer being used. All of these can be turned into housing much more quickly than building from the ground up. And so at the statewide level, we have an opportunity to fund those programs, to push those programs down the line to our local communities. And this is one of the main reasons I ran. These are some of the solutions I want to fight for in Sacramento, and I'm excited and hopefully have an opportunity to do that.
Thank you so much for all your input. And we'll open it up to some questions. One of the questions that we usually get from a lot of our folks out there is, how exactly do you plan, if elected, to bring the state help directly to the West Valley?
So, one of the things that I've seen through, my campaign and looking at really what's happening in both our district and neighboring districts is that especially our district has really been neglected. The investments, every year legislators are able to bring back investments to their community. This year, because of a big budget surplus, there were bigger than normal investments in communities. All of the neighboring communities got around $20 to $30 million of local investments. Our district didn't even get $2 million. So, part of that is being able to be effective as a legislator, and really, being up there and fighting for your district and your community. And that's what I have a record of doing for 20 years, is fighting and delivering on solutions. I think the other piece is making sure that we're working at the statewide level, to basically move funds from the state to the local communities. LA City, LA County certainly get, a good portion of those funds, but often, as folks in the Valley and the West Valley know, it doesn't always make it out to us, right? And so I think part of it is making sure that we're working with, local government and board of supervisors and city council members to make sure that there's partnership, that they know about these funds, that they know about the needs in our community and the solutions that are needed in our community. And we partner together to find local solutions and make sure resources are sent out here. I think probably a lot of people here know that in SPA 2, we've had one team that can respond to homelessness crises, right? I mean, it's ridiculous. Batu is huge. It's like the whole valley and Santa Clarita, right? So, so those are things that that I think really have to change urgently. I'm hoping that, we have an opportunity. I know a number of us are running on this call today for Senate, for Assembly, and for Supervisor, and looking forward to the new batch of us coming in and being able to really work together and coordinate, because I think that there's a lot of shared values and a lot of desire to really just make a difference, right? We have to just focus on getting results for our community. That's what it's really about. And I think there's a lot of interest in making sure that that happens.
All right, one of the follow-up questions that we have is more about the homeless count and LAHSA. So how do you feel about the numbers that we have, some increased numbers as far as the homeless count? How can we reduce homelessness in the area? And then how do you feel about LAHSA as a whole, as an organization, helping with homelessness in the San Fernando Valley and surrounding areas?
So, on the homeless count, I think that I get a sense, and from folks that I've talked to, I feel like there's probably an undercount on that. I know it was our first homeless count in a while because of COVID. I was out there doing the homeless count myself and went up to Santa Clarita since I had not done it there before. And it seems like they're definitely, it's hard for me not to believe that during COVID and folks struggling so much that there wasn't a bigger increase. And so I don't know, but the result is we have what we have when it comes to the homelessness count. There was an increase, and we know that this is a crisis that's not going away, right? LAHSA is a city and county, agency that doesn't really operate at the statewide level. And so I wouldn't have a big role in making that happen. But, what I do think is that we need to make sure that agencies that are tasked with addressing homelessness are on the ground and are coordinating with local organizations doing work too, and local leadership like neighborhood councils and WVNAH, to really make sure that there's really good coordination around addressing the needs that are coming out of our community. I think that there's a really it can be, there's real different experiences and different results that we hear on the ground. And, I feel like there's a narrative that's developed, which is partly, I think, convenient for some people, right? That people are service resistant. But, in my experience, that is not the case at all, right? When Project Room Key came online during COVID, and we were doing outreach asking folks if they wanted to get inside. I went to my normal route of about 45 people. Nearly every single person wanted to get inside. Every person was like, yes, a room where I can lock the door and feel safe and have my own space with the bathroom, cool. But the only people who just had more questions that they needed answered were folks with completely reasonable questions and concerns that any of us would have about thinking about moving into a new place, right? Can I take my partner? Can I take my pet? Can I take all my stuff that, I use to make a living? Completely reasonable things that people would raise. And so, folks want to get off the streets, and agencies, part of it is we don't have enough housing. We don't have enough places for folks to go. We don't have enough mental health treatment. Part of it is, it's hard to find folks on a regular basis when they're experiencing homelessness. So I think, if we were able to have more service centers that connect people with services where they can come to us and they can also get the resources they need when they need it. You know, those are kinds of solutions that would, I think, be more helpful or be incredibly helpful and could be coordinated with LAHSA to make sure people are actually getting into housing and services. You know, I mean, there's a lot of solutions that I'm hoping are coming from the state that are going to really make an impact. There was over $7 billion in mental health funding that came out of the state budget this last year. And, you know, my opponent voted against it, unfortunately, but we, you know, we are about to have a huge infusion of state dollars in solutions, you know, around homelessness and to support people who are experiencing homelessness. And I'm very hopeful that those are going to start, you know, we're going to start seeing an impact around that. And hopefully those are resources that that folks in LAHSA can connect people to when they haven't had, you know, somewhere to connect people in the past.
Thanks so much. I have one final question that came from our audience. And this question is based around board and care facilities. Why has the daily reimbursement rate for individuals and the board and care homes have not been increased already? They're rapidly going out of business and they're a source of a last resort for many individuals who cannot live on their own.
Mm.
And how do you plan to address those issues?
You know, that's something I need to learn more about. So Pat, I would love to talk with you more. If you could, you know, share more information with me. I'm not super familiar with that issue, but I'd love to learn more about it.
I will get some resources over to you.
Thank you.
It's kind of something that's very puzzling because it should be an easy fix. But
yeah,
I'll get some resources over to you.
Wonderful. I'd love to hear about that. Easy fixes are great.
It's all it is money.
You're right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. We got to prioritize things that work, you know?
Yeah, well, and it was a problem because with the low reimbursement rate, let me appear so I'm not invisible. So with the low reimbursement rate, combined with the very high property values and low interest rates, a lot of these places, which really, you know, what you see when you go into these is you know, they're adults that really just can't quite make it on their own. And what was happening was the operators, who in a lot of cases were, you know, families or mom and pop organizations, I had a real, even though they really had formed a fairly stable kind of expanded family structure with their tenants, they were almost forced to start selling out because of the higher property values. They're not making money. It's a 24/7 job. It's really a tough job. And, you know, and the BNC's got a bad reputation after the large institutions started closing, but you know, they need support. They need you know, county mental health support for their tenants and so on. But I think it'd be a good time to jump on it because the property values are down a little and the interest rates are sky high. So not too much incentive to sell out right now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, that's helpful. I'd love to learn more, and I'll drop my email here so you have it, so you can send information. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely, you know, some folks who they're going to need some help maybe for their whole life, and we have to be able to figure that too. But you know, but I think there's a lot of people that, you know, if with some help and support, they can get on their feet. And making that little bit of investment will definitely pay dividends, not only, you know, in terms of county and city and state coffers, but also just investing in people's lives and success and healthier communities. So I think there's a lot of good work we can do. I would love an opportunity to be able to represent the West Valley and Assembly District 40, and just, you know, really appreciate everybody's time and consideration. And thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks so much. We now have Carolyn Menjivar, who is running for state senate. And thank you so much for being here. Want to just give a quick introduction.
Can you see me by any chance?
I cannot see you, no ma'am. And I tried to, I'm not sure if you were able to get you as a panelist. I tried to promote you to panelist so you could.
Yeah,
Jump over and use video.
I think I had to get promoted as a co-host for me to be able to turn on my video. So maybe Caroline needs that too.
Okay, might be okay.
it says that the host has disabled my ability to start my video.
Okay, we'll fix that shortly for you. 1 minute.
Try now, Caroline.
There we go.
All right, excellent. You are here. Thank you so much for attending and being here. What I'll have you do, I was going to give you a great introduction. I know that you're a Marine Corps veteran, served as a field deputy and East Valley representative for Mayor Eric Garcetti. Did some great outreach during COVID to get folks that were unable to be reached, socially distant, and involved in community events. And I really welcome you to be here and would like for you to just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself as well as some of your information that you want to do regarding homelessness in our area. And thanks for being here again.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, everyone. I apologize, with 15 days left, you can imagine it's one event after the other. So I'm in the car moving on to another event. Carolyn Menjivar, looking to be the next state senator for this brand new district, actually, State Senate District 20, that since redistricting brought in the West Valley, the area that I grew up and was raised in. This is a community that encompasses my backyard. From the city of Burbank to Canoga Park, it's the communities that I grew up in. This is where I went to high school. This is where I've worked. This is where I've dedicated close to 15 years of my life to empowering, to uplifting this community, to bringing as many resources as possible. Yes, you heard a little bit about my background from being a Marine Corps veteran to working as an EMT, where I got my first experience to working with the unhoused population, because as an EMT, I would pick up patients from actually boarding care facilities, from sober living facilities. I would pick up patients and transfer them to county psych ER, to the psychiatric emergency rooms that we have here in the San Fernando Valley, which are in Olive View, which are in Mission Community Hospital. I will pick up patients through psychiatric holds on a 72-hour hold, only to then find out that they were put back on the street 72 hours later with no plan, no sustainable plan for them to get off of their feet, to get to a system, to get them back on their feet. I apologize. And it was that first experience where I started questioning how these systems weren't put in place to assist people who were down on their luck, who need greater help. I've navigated inpatient and outpatient treatment centers and recognized that we do nothing to assist people who are struggling, suffering from addiction, who are struggling with illnesses, mental health illnesses that we, since the LASA report showed that 40% of the individuals living on our streets or who do not have a roof over their head are dealing with. And there's no system put in place. And while I'm excited that the state is putting an extra amount of budget towards this, there aren't enough direction. There isn't enough bullet points to really address the real problem. And as a social worker, what I'm bringing to this table is this perspective of the trauma-informed, this phrase that is so often thrown around in how we deal with marginalized communities. And what trauma-informed is, you recognize that you can't look at an individual and say that they're just someone who's living on the street, or you can't look at individuals like, oh, they're just struggling with addiction. It's what is happening around them, their social surrounding that got them to this place. What additional services can we help with? What are the preventative preventative measures we can put in place to address the community as a whole. Looking at a community as clients, as a social worker would, meeting them where they're at, understanding that you can't just implement processes, you can't implement programs and expect the community to know that they exist, to come to you to ask for that help. You got to go to the community with these resources. You've heard that I've worked as a field director, as a field organizer in local government. And it was in those roles that I championed to bring tiny homes to this district. I championed to bring a bridge home to this district. I would do business canvas meetings, work with individuals, NIMBYs, people who felt that whatever shelter I brought, whatever permanent supportive housing project I brought, that I would bring more unhoused individuals. And what I did was actually take people on field trips, if you will, adult field trips, to permanent supportive housings held by LA Family Housing, to demystify these ideas that they were dirty, that they were run down, and to show them that they were just like everywhere everyone else lives, that we were putting people under a roof where people could have a bed to sleep on. What I'm bringing to the table is, like I mentioned, years of experience of being out in the field, of navigating streets, of listening and talking to individuals who are on our streets, where I've seen that there's been an increase of women who are unhoused through not all, but a lot of experience of interpersonal violence, of human trafficking, of gender-based violence, and understanding that homelessness is not a one-size-fits-all, that we need to address it through different lenses, that we need to recognize that we need special homes for those who are victims of interpersonal violence, that the trauma-informed lens is very key when dealing with certain individuals. As a veteran, I also recognize that this is a county that has the highest numbers of veterans living on our streets. As a veteran, I recognize that PTSD plays a part to veterans living on the street, and that we failed them so much. I'm very excited for the Valley to have potentially 3 veteran housing. I think one in Pilar's future assembly district, one in Sun Valley that's already up and running, and another one that I think just the grand opening just happened in Silmar. Very excited that they're all here in the San Fernando Valley. Very excited also to say that, you know, I'm looking to push for projects like the Skateland project, a project where we took a building where I grew up skating and is now being utilized as a location for 107 beds, looking at these buildings to help push for converting them for housing, understanding that this is a district that has so much potential for that. And I'm excited to bring my firsthand experience, my academic experience, my professional experience up to Sacramento, and to address these issues that intersect with one another, that are not within a specific tunnel or silo, because you can't address homelessness without addressing lack of access to mental health, touching the poverty and equity, dealing with tenant rights, protection, and so forth. So I'm not sure of the platform here, but I don't know if there's a Q&A after that, or I'll leave it at there for now.
Thank you so much for that. And thank you for all the things that you want to bring back to the district, because that's important. Yeah, there's a couple of questions that we have. So I'll ask you a question or two, if that's okay. First question is similar to before. How do you plan on bringing things from Sacramento back to our area, who is, you know, usually neglected for some of the services and things like that we receive?
You're absolutely right. You know, as someone who's worked in city government, I've been at the tables where programs are initiated, and I've had to raise my hand and say, what about the San Fernando Valley? When we think about public transportation, we are so far behind when it comes to that, when it comes to so many different things. Oftentimes, especially in the West Valley, people think that no one needs support here. This district, this new district, took out a big chunk of the West Valley. Canoga Park, Winnetka, Restina, Lake Balboa, to this district to make and I think about how during the pandemic it took us so long to bring COVID vaccine clinics to the West Valley, because people thought no one needed them over there. They can access them through their own means, and we struggled at a city local level to raise our voices to say no, it's needed there. it's so important to bring it to the West Valley as well. So what I'm going to be doing up in Sacramento and say, yes, we have a phenomenal budget surplus, but what do we do with that money? And making sure that we're adequately bringing down money that's going to meet everyone's needs. Because when we talk of public transportation, I'm so happy that the light rail is coming to the East Valley. But when I lived in Winnetka, it took me almost 2.5 hours to get to UCLA when I was a college student. From the Winnetka to get from the West Valley, the ends of the West Valley to get anywhere, it's like traveling to like a whole state in the East Coast, right? We need access to public transportation. We need affordable housing in the West Valley. Not, again, it's this myth that everyone in the West Valley can afford a 1-bedroom apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment, and it's not correct. So it's that perspective that I bring to share these stories up in Sacramento and say, hold up, don't think that this is one size fits all in the San Fernando Valley. We still need the resources. We need the support in this area. We need affordable housing. We need more projects to occur here in the West Valley. From HomeKey, Project HomeKey should be something that you're seeing a lot here in the West Valley. So I think what it's really important is to share those experiences you've had working in these fields, to say, I know this for a fact because I've worked in this field, and this is how I can tell you directly we're going to impact. So from advocating for budget to come here, to helping or being a partner with service providers to obtain a Project HomeKey site, to working with service providers to obtain any other kind of site here in the area, it's going to be key for a state legislator to make sure they have that strong relationship there.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. And I have a couple more questions. One of the questions that I'll ask is similar to the one that you may have heard before, and that was from Pat. And it was basically about the board and care facilities. How will we maintain those, increase the funding for those, and keep from losing the board and care facilities, which you know firsthand are very important when dealing with homelessness?
You know, when I heard that question, I just was reminded of me as an EMT dropping off patients at those facilities, and then hearing years later that almost all of them were shut down. What net are we then providing individuals who are trying to sober up? What protection are we providing individuals who felt like we finally got a roof over our head? I'm trying to make ends meet. That's what board and cares were providing. That's what sober living facilities were providing. And now we turn our backs on individuals and said, well, figure it out. When in fact, this was something that they were utilizing. In no shape or way or form is this a luxury location, because when I walked into those homes, I could pinpoint 20,000 building codes violation. I would walk in and say, oh my goodness, we need so much love and support to come down on these locations and to really help people. Because when you walk into a home and it looks the way I saw these places to look, can you imagine being motivated to continue to be as successful, to continue on your sobriety path, to continue to stay off the streets? It would be very hard to be motivated by living in those situations. So I've seen it firsthand, but I also recognize that it was a net that we needed for these individuals. So I'm going up to Sacramento to make sure that we had in and outpatient enough beds for individuals, that we have a place that we can put people that people can go to, that physicians can transfer them instead of saying, well, here's a bus token, you're back on the street. I hope I don't see you in the next 72 hours or so forth, because that's the only option we have. So I know, I think she said it's an easy fix for a budget. It's not as easy to say, I need money for this, but it's to paint the picture to all the legislators, the governor, to say, come take a walk with me. Let me explain to you what this did for people. Let me explain to you that this is a life-saving facility. And that, again, I turn to my experience of having been in these realms that I can bring to the table and say, I've worked there. I've seen it firsthand. I know how much it saved an individual, but I also don't want to go back to the same way they looked. We need more support for them.
Thank you so much. And the final question that we have today for you, I know you kind of touched on a little bit of the affordable housing and things of that nature. How can you bring more affordable housing to the West Valley and, you know, help promote that from a Senate level?
Yeah, you know, so what legislators also do is these partnerships, right? Sorry, I'm trying to walk and talk at the same time here. It's these partnerships, right? You have developers that want to come in and build buildings, and then they say, I'm going to give you 13% of the affordable housing. And we've seen this pattern of like 13%. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. You're marvelous. When in fact, what we need to do is like, how dare you disrespect my community with 13% of affordable housing? No, if you're going to come here and build, I need 50% of affordable housing, because 13% doesn't do anything. You're not housing any of my community here. So what legislators' role in here is to be the negotiator, to be the motivator, to say, this is why it's so important for you to give me X amount, and how I'm going to help you in this room is like, hey, I'm going to pass for more subsidies. You know, there are issues of removing property taxes from full affordable housing development projects. How can we help you be as successful as possible, that in turn you're providing affordable housing for our community members? At the same time, we have so many developers, nonprofit developers, that when they want to build something, they have to sit on the land while they're navigating the stream of going through the processes, and they have to pay upwards of $30,000 a month just in interest while they're navigating the streamline to start breaking ground. That's money that they can in turn instead put into more affordable units. That's something at the state that we can do to remove that, to hold it, and then to hold it until we do what's called an RFP, request for purchase, and then that saves them money. Something else that we can do that can increase the number of affordable units, that can speed the process for affordable units, is to put all the financial deadlines on one deadline. Because what you see right now is the city, county, federal, state have different financial deadlines for themselves. And if one developer misses one deadline, they have to wait a whole year to apply again, because not all of them are on the same wavelength, if you will. So those are some administrative things that we can do just to help on that. And then again, just reiterate, it's the relationship, it's the championing of saying this is a location, working with your city partners, having that good relationship with city partners to say, this is what it's needed, this is the location we can do. With the state and city partnership, I know we can do it.
I thank you so much for participating and for your answers. If you want to have a closing statement, feel free to do so. And again, we appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. Again, I apologize that I was a little mobile while talking here. But I just want to say there's 15 days left until this election, and there's so much at stake right now. We're looking at immigration reform. We're looking at the Vision Act not being passed by the sitting senator of the seat that I'm looking to take on. We're looking at things not being passed in the Senate particular, where our environmental bills go to die, where the most recent success of the 3,200 buffer for new oil just passed after 2 years. We need fighters in the Senate. We need to make sure that the Aliso Canyon bill, which again failed, gets back on track, where the Valley Generating Plant gets on the track of being closed down, where the money that's coming down from Sacramento to deal with their homeless crisis has directives of how it's being used. Because, you know, we throw a lot of money down from the state. Where is it going? We need accountability for big, large entities that are overseeing this. We need individuals who are going to bring everyone to the table and say, let's work together, versus saying, oh no, you have to talk to that person to talk to that person. I've seen firsthand what miscommunication can do. And I'm asking for the support to get someone in office who has been on the front lines, who can speak about the experiences because she's lived it, because she's worked in it. And last but not least, you know, I am someone who experienced eviction myself, who had a couch surf for about a year, who knew what housing instability felt like. And while I didn't sleep on the street or sleep in my car, I was blessed enough to have friends who lent me their couch. I recognize that that's not a situation anyone should be in. And I am the daughter of a mom who is still on a waiting list for an affordable unit, and it's been over 5 years. I know the pain of having to keep on track of that, define a unit. And I want to make sure those are the things that no one else has to experience. So thank you so much.
Thanks again. We appreciate you. We appreciate the speakers that were here today. We do have one more speaker that is on the way. And so in the meantime, we can actually start with some of our council files for our neighborhood council until they arrive, if that's okay.
I'm here.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I apologize.
I just can't, I'm not allowed to turn on my video.
Oh, no problem at all. Well, that is excellent. I'm so glad that you are here. So we have Lindsey Horvath that's running for LA County Supervisor. Just a brief introduction for her. Seems like she has scored victories for our community on advancing the rights of women and LGBTQ+ people, as well as creating age-friendly, sustainable neighborhoods. She was the longest consecutive serving mayor of West Hollywood, leading the city in 2020 and 2021. Thank you so much for being here, and tell us a little bit about yourself as well as what your plans are for homelessness in our community.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today. And I thank you for the work that you do in your neighborhoods each and every day to improve the quality of life. I have spent 15 years in local government and was a community organizer before that. So working at the local level, building bridges, building coalitions, and bringing people together is what I enjoy doing and have a track record of doing in my own community and throughout the region. I served, as you mentioned, as mayor of my city twice, most recently during COVID. And I also served as president of California Contract Cities Association, the association of cities that contract for service in LA County and beyond. And so I saw during this time of crisis where the county met the moment, where it failed, and more importantly, what cities need and what neighborhoods need from the county in order to thrive. We've seen firsthand the failure in terms of the services that we need from the county to reach our unhoused residents. And I have that experience in my own community. We brought representatives from the county to meet with our city council to talk with us about what solutions we needed to be implementing, what weren't we doing right. And this was about 4 years ago. And the short of it was they said, actually, we just need to be doing what you're doing. We're not there yet, which was nice to hear at the time, but it was frustrating then, and it's even more frustrating now to know that they're not doing what we have proven works. Going out into the streets, meeting people where they are, providing transportation and resource to get people into housing, helping them get connected with mental health services, addiction recovery, leading with services and care on the ground in the streets to make sure that people are getting connected. And actually the service providers we work with also have contracts with the county. They often hire people who themselves were formerly unhoused. So there's actually a pipeline to getting people into jobs. And there's an inherent trust there between people who have that lived experience helping to get people off the streets. We've learned that some things as simple as moving a few people at a time who have found community living on the streets with one another and moving them as a group instead of one by one allows them to have a greater success rate to get into housing and stay in housing and be successful in staying in that housing. We work to have an inclusionary housing policy to make sure that as we're building housing, that a set aside portion of those units are required to be affordable, as I heard mentioned earlier. It's not a negotiation with the developers for us. We require at least a certain percentage. And in fact, our city council just upped that percentage to at least 30% affordable. And we have to make sure that that we continue to increase both covenanted affordable housing that's set aside for people who income qualify, and that we protect people in the housing that they can hopefully already afford, but for a missed paycheck might fall into homelessness because they don't have a safety net or they didn't have a savings account to keep them into that housing. We created a rental assistance program that helped people stay in their housing even before COVID came. And that was a great way to and a cost-effective way to keep people in housing and not increase the homelessness crisis that we were seeing in our streets. We also had, we saw recently in our headlines that between the city and county of Los Angeles, over $150 million in Section 8 housing vouchers have been returned back to the federal government when we are in a crisis. And so in my own community, when I learned that people, especially Russian-speaking immigrants, were having to go to Alhambra to get help with their Section 8 housing vouchers, we got an expert in Section 8 housing vouchers in our community center and our local park, someone who spoke both English and Russian, to make sure that we could help our residents have the resources they needed in their community to have the assistance and stay in the housing that they needed, and to make sure that landlords, property owners were able to get that source of funding to keep people in their housing and keep it affordable. These kinds of practical solutions are the social safety net that the county is supposed to be providing for every community. And it is that local hands-on perspective, actually implementing the change that we want to see in our communities, whether it's on the topic of homelessness and housing, or safety, or sustainability, and making sure we realize our climate action goals, making sure that we get people back to work and good jobs that allow themselves and their families a good quality of life, having a seat at the Metro Board and making sure we actually build the promises of Measure M and make sure that people get connected to the jobs and housing that they need with transportation that is reliable and safe. There are so many opportunities for this next supervisor to deliver for working people in Los Angeles County. And I am uniquely positioned, coming from local government, building bridges across the county, and with the coalition of support that I have gained on this campaign. This is not just about how we win a campaign, it's more importantly how we serve LA County. And that's why I'm very excited to have this opportunity today, and hope that you will be there with me in the boardroom to make sure that you are helping to inform the decisions that we make going forward. I'm proud to be the only candidate in this race endorsed by Planned Parenthood, the Democratic Party, the Los Angeles Times, over 100 local elected officials, including many in our district, and all throughout LA County, 4 of the sitting supervisors, and a whole host of other organizations who believe that our leadership, our change, is what they want to see in LA County. We want to make sure that we are endorsed by every organization that is committed to protecting our environment. My opponent has accumulated over $250,000 from corporate polluters and was deemed by the California environmental voters as the lead of the polluter caucus in Sacramento. We cannot have that kind of quote unquote leadership, which I would call failed leadership, come back to LA County, recycle bad ideas from Sacramento, and have them telling us what to do in our own neighborhoods. We need to uplift the voices of community, which is what I have done and intend to do as your next LA County supervisor. And I'm happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for everything that you've done at the local level, and hopefully we can get that transferred up higher. One of the questions that we have is for county politicians. Have prioritized housing and homeless over mental health care, including drug addiction. How will you, as a county supervisor, provide effective long-term care on the street so people may develop the personal strength to climb and stay out of homelessness?
So it's a very important question, and the program that we have implemented in my community actually has about an 80% success rate, getting people off the streets and into housing services, or both. And as I mentioned, we meet people on the streets. We contract with social service providers that are trusted in our community because that's where people already go. But we also provide them with the assistance and care that they need to stay housed and stay off the streets. We actually follow them through the system of care. So we're not just pushing people, across boundaries or from one neighborhood to another, leaving them to fend for themselves. We actually pair them with a social worker. We make sure that they have the support that they need and access to the resources they need, whether it's addiction recovery services, mental health services, you name it. And we need to expand mental health services throughout Los Angeles County. So we're not asking people to go hours out of their way to access those services, both when they're in a time of crisis and just for everyday mental health needs. We need to destigmatize access accessing mental health care by locating it in our communities and making it more accessible for everyone. We know that our frontline workers and healthcare providers need mental health care while they've all been taking care of us through this time of crisis. We've seen enormous burnout in a variety of industries because people don't want to continue because they're not supported in the work that they're doing while they're caring for others. We have to take care of each other. This is absolutely immoral what we see going on in our streets. And I think that there's a lot of resource in LA County. In fact, currently there's over $1 billion sitting in a bank account in LA County right now, dedicated specifically to mental health crisis and mental health issues that isn't being spent because the government bureaucracy for service providers to access those funds is too great. That's absurd. We need to change that and make sure the resources are getting into the hands of the people who need it.
Thank you so much for that. And then one final question that we have is kind of based on the same thing. A lot of the mental health resources that we utilize through the county sometimes are kind of stagnant based on that, pipeline where you can't get things through. How would you bring some of the key things that you've done in the city or in local government to the county so that we can utilize that throughout LA County? Because it's a huge county, there's a lot going on.
Absolutely. And you're absolutely right to say that LA County is huge, but it is still supposed to be local government. And no matter where I go in this district, I hear people complaining about the gap in service between the county and cities, but especially for residents of Los Angeles who navigate a big bureaucracy for their own city services, let alone trying to figure out what's going on in the county. That has to change. I'm prepared because I've lived this experience now for 15 years to make sure that we're reaching back from the county into the cities to connect those services. So your local council members, your mayor know how and who is going to provide the services and care you need in your community. Supervisor Hahn, who has endorsed me in this race, has proposed a plan that expands mental health care, urgent cares throughout the district and throughout the county. And that's one way that we can make mental health care accessible, not just, as I said earlier, for those times of crisis, but for everyone who needs it in our community, and making sure that they're able to get that service and care right in their own neighborhoods. I know that North Hills Community Health Clinic is a prime example of how you can pair healthcare on the campus of an LAUSD high school, so families can come in and get healthcare together. Students can access services while they're at school. When people come into that community clinic, if they fill out an application because they're coming in for dental work, if they qualify for other services, the county, the providers in that building connect them with the other departments of the county. That's what we need to be doing, centering our most vulnerable, making sure we're meeting people where they are and giving them access to the services and support that they need, rather than asking our most vulnerable and challenged residents to navigate the bureaucracy of the downtown hall of administration. That just doesn't make sense. We have to do better, and there are models that are already in place that we can expand. There are services and larger long-term scale plans, like I mentioned with the mental health urgent cares, and I've already identified folks. Service providers throughout the district, one in Santa Monica, two in the Valley, who are prepared to open up mental health beds tomorrow if the county services meet them in their facilities. So making sure that they get the funding they need to open up those mental health beds is very important. And we also have to build the pipeline of our future workforce to ensure that we do have more people who are coming into this profession, and to make sure that they look like the people that they're intending to serve, that they share lived experience, and they're able to establish trust in a way that makes sense. So I have lots of plans about how we can do that and how we can partner with you and work in community together to realize these goals, to make sure that we're delivering them in the way that makes sense for your neighborhoods. What we've seen, especially from Sacramento recently, is a lot of one-size-fits-all approaches that really don't fit us. And so that's where coming from local government and having that local perspective inside the county board is going to be very important.
Thank you again for everything that you provided for us. We do appreciate you being here. I know you have a really tight schedule, and so I'm glad that you.
That's okay.
And I'll give you a couple minutes for closing statements if you like that.
Sure. I really appreciate your time. Thank you again for inviting me to be with you today, and for the work that you do each and every day. I'll put my email in the chat after I turn off my video so you don't have like a weird angle from my phone camera. But I thank you for the opportunity to talk about these issues, and please reach out to me if we didn't cover your topic of interest. There's so much going on in LA County right now, and a lot of people don't even know that LA County exists, let alone what a supervisor does, or that this race is even on your ballot. So I often tease that there are people that people often go to ask, like, who do I vote for the judges? Now you are the people who know what a supervisor is, you know who's running for it, and you can recommend that people vote for me. So that way we can all work together to start solving these problems and make sure that the resources of LA County meet you where you are. Do you know that LA County has a $40 billion annual budget? That's a lot of opportunity to make change. We have to make sure those resources are realized in our communities, that we're actually delivering for folks, and that you have somebody in the seat who knows how to do that work. My opponent will often tell you that, you know, in order to solve a lot of the problems that we've discussed here today, you have to invest more money, and he knows where to get it. Well, I don't think we just need to throw money at problems. I think we need to invest your public dollars wisely. I don't want to ask for another cent from the public until we have accounted for the money that we already have in our county system, and make sure that it's being used wisely and responsibly to keep you safe and healthy and cared for. There have been a lot of well-funded attacks on me lately from the landlord and real estate industries, from law enforcement associations that support my opponent, spreading lies and hateful misinformation. So I really appreciate opportunities like this one for you to ask me questions directly, for you to get to know me, and make sure that I'm answering the questions and concerns that you have. You know, these hateful attacks are dividing us at a time where we need to come together. We've heard what division in back rooms and backroom dealings can do, and creating toxic environments in our government. And you all have now seen the worst, your worst fears realized about what government can look like. I want to be the change in what government should look like. I want to restore public trust, work in partnership with you, so you know exactly what LA County is doing to care for you and support you each and every day. And I thank you for your time, your attention, and your commitment to making sure that we do better in LA County.
Thank you again. We appreciate you, Lindsey. Have a great day.
Okay, you too.
Thank you. And we appreciate that, all of our speakers who are running, and the conversations that we have with them. We're going to move on to Ms. Pat Bates, who will do some council file review for possible community impact statements. Take it away, Pat.
Well, thank you. I'm going to share my screen here. There we go. And I'd like to thank the three candidates for appearing. It's been interesting. I do understand how busy everyone is right at this time in the election cycle. And I do appreciate them coming and answering some hard questions, and kind of letting everyone get to know them a little bit. The items that are on the agenda actually have passed. All of these items have passed the city council. They're all waiting for reports back from the city legislative analyst or administrative officer, so that they're all waiting reports back. They're all significant. The first one, and this, you can, from the agenda, if you have the agenda, it has links to the council file. So you can go in and you can take a look at them. You can actually, I believe, go into ENS and request to be updated. In fact, I think from the city clerk's screen you go to, I think you can request updates on them. So you'll know when reports come in. The first one is for LASA to provide full access to the HMIS system, which is a tracking system for individuals that LASA is assisting, and it's you know, it's information on them. It assists with data collection, follow-up. I'm sure every aspect of the process, from engaging them and getting treatment or getting whatever they need, and hopefully getting them on their way off the street. We have a lot of people doing outreach and work with people on the street, and this would start. There are volunteer organizations. There's nonprofits like LA Family Housing, but each city council district, to the best of my knowledge at this point, really has a staff dealing with unhoused people in their area. And to the best of my knowledge, they still do not have access to the HMIS. So they're kind of operating blind. I deal fairly closely with people from a couple of the different council offices, and it is a source of frustration. So this is passed. They're waiting for a report back. Tom might be able, from his position, he might be able to shed some light on how the HMIS data is accessed now and how one obtains access to it. So Tom, chime in if you have any thing to add on that.
Yeah, so it's actually a federally based system, and it's, you know, every city, you know, state across the nation is involved in it, and it's a kind of captured for on a federal basis, basically, and only certain service providers have access to that. And you're right, it is, but all that information is captured, and I think Ray works with this as well, maybe even more than I do firsthand, but it's just a kind of a collection of information, and this is how they determine, you know, people's eligibility for housing quite often, right? And so it's a comprehensive system that collects a lot of data points, and it's hugely important in this process. And I would think that there might be somebody at the council district office that should have access to that, and that makes sense to me. And maybe Ray can add some extra information to that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. So yeah, I agree. It's really great data tracking, and also make sure that funds are allocated where needed, and helps people get into housing. And it is a sore point for a lot of council offices that I've worked with, because they're like Pat said, kind of flying blind and trying to get the information second or third hand, when it could be, you know, more helpful for even council files that people are doing and other information. So I agree with that one as well. I think this will be a good one to put forward.
Good. Thank you. And as I said, these have all passed city council, but this just seems like a no-brainer. You know, there's a lot of things going on, and you just don't understand why. And the next item, what the city council, as part of their legislative agenda, passed 22-0002 S107. It's a resolution asking for changes in the California Health and Safety Code to increase the daily reimbursement rate for board and care homes for residents who receive SSI, SSP, or Medi-Cal. I would imagine it was communicated to the state, although with the chaos at City Hall, God knows. But this has been an unfolding situation for years. The reimbursement rate has not even begun to keep up with the costs of operating these facilities. And as one of our candidates, Carolyn, did mention, some of these places, they got a terrible reputation. They sprung up all over the place after the large widespread closures of the big institutions in the late 1960s, 1970s. And a lot of them were frankly dreadful. And they are regulated by the state now. And they do need more services. For example, if you have, let's say, some people that just can't make it on their own and they're living there, and they should get some county services. They should get some mental health services. The reimbursement rates that are paid to these operators quite often don't even pay for operating costs. That's why they've been just bailing on them, and especially with the property values sky high like they've been. It's almost just it makes no sense to try to stay in that business. And you can go back to around 2019. There was several articles in the LA Times that they needed to have a big increase in funding. And if you talk with anyone in social services, they'll, one of their major complaints is the reimbursement rate is, maybe Tom could correct me, but I think I'd be amazed if it's a fifth of the reimbursement rate for people with developmental disorders that have to be in this type of facility. So this is something that I truly do not understand why it's still being talked about and why it hasn't been done. Because when these board and cares are closing, a lot of times this was the last resort for the folks in there, and it's a conduit to the street. So I'll ask Tom if he has anything to add to that.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. I'm just going to say that, a lot of the clients that I work with in mental health, community mental health, do live in places like this, and they're really beneficial in some ways, and some are nicer than others. But I think that you had mentioned, there's been just a huge drove of them who are just tired of pinching pennies to make it worse, and then have just closed down. So typically where someone like this would go, someone who doesn't have family, they might have been in and out of locked mental health facilities on the 5150, right, on psychiatric holds. They get placed in a board and care. They get set up to stay there indefinitely with their Social Security because they'll probably have permanent disability. But when that place closes, they really typically, these are people who don't have connections with family and they have no place to go. And then when they go into the street, they languish on the street, and then they decompensate emotionally, physically, mentally. And so this is a lot of what we're seeing in LA County, just people who just didn't really have the ability to kind of house themselves. They may have already been on permanent disability because of their mental health and co-occurring issues like medical problems as well. And so you could imagine how this happens when we have nearly 100 of them close since 2016, how many people that represents. They're now on the street with no place to go. And they're not really easy to house because there's some, inability to potentially care for themselves or have the wherewithal to do that. So this is hugely impactful to our homelessness situation. And again, simply put, if we just had the proper housing and the facilities that we need, this wouldn't be a problem today. But it's becoming hugely increased since these large closures have happened.
Okay, thank you. So again, it's something people keep talking about it. Just do something. The next one, 210002 S191. Again, this is an item in the city legislative program. It's requesting that the governor apply for the section 111115 Medicaid waiver to allow for expansion of Medicaid coverage to adults in need of inpatient mental health treatment. The waiver, I have been informed by our state assembly person or his legislative analyst that the waiver is in the process of being requested. This will allow for Medicaid coverage for individuals in inpatient settings in excess of 16 beds. And I guess the waiver's been available since 2018. I guess that the initial restriction came about as probably part of now I'm forgetting the name of the bill during the Carter administration, and it was one of the few things that stuck in there. But I know, for example, the county wanted to put in a fairly large facility, I believe, out near Olive View, and maybe this was not true, but I was told they had to build it in 3 separate buildings of 16 units rather than one larger building, which would have been much more effective. So this would allow some larger institutions to be opened up. And I think everyone would agree we do have a shortage of mental health inpatient beds, not just for unhoused, but for everybody. So again, that apparently is in process, and we'll have to watch it as it goes forward. Has anyone got any comment on that?
Yeah, I guess my understanding, just quickly, that the waiver happened originally, or the limitations happened originally because they were, I guess, concerned that if they were going to deconstruct the California mental health hospital system, that if they didn't put some kind of restrictions on how many people could be housed in one place, they might just end up rebuilding it again in a kind of a private sector, right? So, but the concern is, I guess, originally that they're going to limit the number of people who can be housed that have mental health issues. But I think ultimately that's been very restrictive, because now there's population has expanded, and people and facilities are limited to 16 only. And so it's I think because of that idea and lack of ability to continue to kind of get people into appropriate settings, that we're looking to kind of expand those numbers. But that's the original, I think, charge for why it happened.
Yeah, I think it was basically, it was part of the plan to get rid of the big institutions when there was a tremendous deinstitutionalization drive. And you know, of course, there is still energy there, but also you have to be practical, I guess. So we'll keep an eye on that. I am told the waiver is being requested. You know, it's hard to tell how quickly the capacity could be expanded, but it's encouraging. And then on there's 3 motions regarding 24/7 unarmed response to nonviolent situations. And then there's another one regarding loss of governance and reform of the response system. And, you know, it's interesting because as Tom is aware, usually when someone is unhoused, most of the time, they're more or less okay for a while. I mean, no, they shouldn't be there. They should be housed, but it's not an emergency. You occasionally get situations where it's an emergency, but it's not really an emergency where you call the police because the person is, you know, disturbed and attacking people, or it's not a situation where they're laying there unconscious and you're not sure if they're dead or not, but they're so debilitated and in such poor shape that you need something done right away. You need someone out there. And we had a similar situation. It took an ungodly amount of time to resolve. And I've talked with other city council office outreach workers that have had similar situations with either severely debilitated people. In our case, it was an extremely elderly woman who was almost totally crippled on a bus bench. And I talked with a fellow over in our adjoining council district, had a similar situation. And it honestly, nothing. We could not get anything done until we started hammering on adult protective services at the county. And I thank Tom for that. I was at my wit's end. And I think finally, between getting them involved and really pushing from our council office, and it took more than one try. I'll be darned if Our Lady didn't check herself out after she went into the hospital the first time, but I understand now she's in a safe situation and house. But you know, we do have these situations where either the person's in a really someplace they shouldn't be, or they're really in dire straits. And you know it, like with this lady, people had called 911. The fire, she was right near the fire station. They come out, she refuses treatment. So you've wasted probably an hour of the LAFD's time, and nothing happens. So I think that anything that can be developed to address situations quickly on weekends when it's hard to get anyone out, weekends, middle of the night, whatever, I think it's long overdue. So these 3 measures have all passed, and we will await reports. I think there have been also some pilot studies, possibly in CD3, I'm not sure. So that's where I'm at with these were just updates on our agenda from the Homelessness Committee. We did have a couple proposed community impact statements, and we have such a vigorous agenda. I doubt that we will get them looked at by our Encino Neighborhood Council till November. So it's best to leave them over for a later meeting. So with that, I'll conclude my blathering about city council files. And I see a question from Glenn.
Yeah, just an overall one with the changes and possible future changes in the makeup of city council, not just resignation, but also, you know, the seating of the new council members in mid-December. I think one of the good things, I'm not sure when the next WVNAH meeting will be after that, but I do think we should put on our agenda a review of the new city council committee assignments. Both the people who've you know, the one who's resigned, the 2 that are not resigning but might, and then the newly elected folks. So
You mean that should resign?
yeah, that's what I meant.
Thank you. Yeah, it you know, I can only hope with as we have seen, what I always thought was going on was indeed going on. So, you know, hopefully it'll work out for the best once the dust settles. And, you know, I think this, you know, it should have happened before, but, you know, we've seen this going on with whenever we've got land use involved with the city council, it's just a corruption magnet, and hopefully we'll start seeing some big changes, I hope.
And P.S., it's not just who's named to the committees. Sometimes when they reorganize, they actually change the structure of the committees. So we need to be on top of that too.
Yeah.
I'm sure there will be a place for housing and homelessness, et cetera. And sometimes they're together, sometimes they're not. So, okay, that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And I'll throw it back to Ray. Thank you for letting me go on for a while.
No, thank you. That's very informative, and it's good news and good information to see this pass. Hopefully the report backs don't take forever and that we can get more information on that.
Yeah, and I will update it. Certainly I'll be updating it for my homelessness committee, and we'll keep an eye on it.
Excellent. Thank you, Pat. We appreciate that. All right, we're rounding down to the end of the agenda. So our next topic here is roundtable comments. Any announcements or wants or needs? So that came right on time, Glenn, and thank you for that input. We should look at that how things are restructured going forward. Anyone else have any announcements or wants or needs?
I have one.
Go right ahead, Pat.
I finally put a link up on the Encino NC. I did I was the facilitator for the Congress of Neighborhoods homelessness meeting. So that's up in the Congress of Neighborhood recordings. I had on a very good rep from Hope of the Valley. And I think it was a very good session.
Excellent. Thank you for providing that update. Hopefully folks can get access to that. The Congress Neighborhood Council was a great event, and I'm glad you were able to present at that.
Yeah. It was the very last session.
Excellent. Okay. Very good. All right, Tom, go right ahead.
Yeah, just think it's important for us to get the recording up as soon as possible. I know that we can post it on the website, and again, whatever we can do to expedite that, since it's, you know, relevant election information for people. So thank you.
Tom, I will turn it into a YouTube as soon as the recording comes over, and just add a little lead in, and I'll have the YouTube link probably this evening.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you, Pat.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. All right, any other announcements or wants or needs? Going once, going twice. Thanks so much, everybody. So the last thing on the agenda that we have is the next general meeting date. Do we have a date, or will that be to be determined?
Yeah, I was just wondering how we're going to work that. I know that we're usually the fourth Sunday of the month. I think that's the holiday period time, the next two. So is there like another, maybe we can just split the difference and do one more meeting this year? Is there a date, or should we just do that offline, figure that out? I just think we don't want to disrupt the holiday weekends for sure, right? So anybody have thoughts on that?
Tom, we're planning to have a Sisters of Social Service homelessness town hall on December 4th. So yeah, so I'm going to be crazy busy that weekend. I'm wondering maybe December 11th or something. Or as long as it's on the earlier side, because there's another meeting at 6:30 that day.
We had originally said that there was one on November 27th, and then there was no general meeting in December.
So that the 27th is Thanksgiving weekend.
So if you wanted to move it, you know, so that it was the 11th, and that would kind of split the difference between the two.
Do we have thoughts on that?
I think
Yeah, that works for me, but go ahead. That's fine. I think that's a good idea. It's a good compromise. Go ahead, Ray.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good plan. That does split the difference, and then that's after Pat's event, so maybe she can bring some information from the event as well too. So I think that's a great idea. If everybody agrees, we'll do it for 12/11.
And Stephanie and I are up for the agenda and for hosting. So thank you, Ray and Pat, so much. And also Stephanie for doing the Zoom in the back end. And then we'll be up for the next one. You did an amazing job.
Thanks so much, everyone. I appreciate you all being here. And if there's not anything else, then we'll go ahead and close the meeting today.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.